it impacts generational wealth opportunities, education, communities, towns, employers. So we really have to tackle this at a systems level, and so that's what we're doing, and we see career navigation as that. On your tables, you'll see these little career navigation spinners, and what we hope is that, or what we're doing through our work is trying to expand the way we think about career navigation, not just as a tool for workforce development, but as a process for self-actualization for one's own career. And so when you look at these, this is really just a conversation starter when you think about it. Like, what were your thoughts when you were trying to connect to your job? What were your barriers? These are some of the conversations we had with the folks that were a part of our research, and so we're going to talk to them today. So our conversations for the next hour will focus on young workers who are new to their careers. We'll also talk to mid-career workers who, through no fault of their own, had to make some shifts, and so we're going to talk to them about what that's like. But we also are going to talk to some folks who occupy a unique space in the workforce ecosystem, and we'll talk more about that later when they come on stage. But what's important to note about them is that when we did our research, to almost everybody named someone who made a difference in their life. So we brought some of those folks here today, and they happen to be a couple of employers and an educator. So we'll have those three conversations and let you see what we saw when we were doing this, and why they're so great. So I have our first guest. You guys ready?
Yes.
All right. Yes. They were dancing backstage, so don't let them fool you. So with us we have Juvilee Hernandez. Juvilee, or Juvie as she likes to be called, is a youth worker, and she works for Northwest Center in Chicago. We have Kayla White. She's from Chicago. Give it up, Chicago. We have Kayla White. She's an IT worker, and she works for Alabama. Alabama Works, Central 6 Alabama. Give it up, Alabama. And we have another Chicagoan. We have Reggie Bridges, who is an assistant kindergarten teacher at It Takes a Village in Chicago. Yes, yes. I see Andy's face like, what? Yes. So I told you they would love you. So we're going to have this conversation. So I'm going to let you guys jump in. And Juvie, by the way, will be joining us later on. I should let you all know that everything you see here today was co-created with them. So this was not us. This was, what do you want to talk about, and let's do it, all right? So Juvie will come back as my co-host later on because she wanted to have conversations with our employers and educator. So Juvie, tell us about your work.
Fortunate enough for me, my career started when I was 14 years old as a youth worker at the Northwest Center. I was given this amazing opportunity to help with community events, outreach, and I fell in love with it. I worked as a youth worker for 4 years and recently became a full-time staff member and have been working there for the past 2 years. In the work that I do, we do youth council, outreach, and community events, which I love so much.
Like Michelle said, I'm currently working with Central 6 Alabama Works. I am a project intern lead project intern, my bad. And I'm currently working on the Worlds of Work event and the product owner of the associated app. I broke into tech a couple years ago through the Innovate Birmingham Data Analytics Bootcamp. And since then, I've gotten a few other certifications, and I've got some work experience, and I'm actually currently studying for my CompTIA A+ and Scrum certifications.
My name is Reginald Bridges. I'm a kindergarten teaching assistant at It Takes a Village Family of Schools. So I seen an ad on Indeed stated early childhood workforce. I decided to look into the job's requirements and qualifications. They were simply looking for youth wanting an actual experience in the elementary school classroom. I decided to go to the info sessions to see if it would be something I'll actually be interested in. Fast forward a couple weeks, and I'm finally inside the classroom after completing all my trainings and certifications. At the time, there were me and 7 other youth workers, and we were called ECWs, Early Childhood Workforce Team. A couple months went by, and they eventually offered me a full-time teaching assistant position.
So one of the things that really I was so impressed by and learned from Juvilee when we sat down and talked with her, and I think you may have seen her on one of our videos, is her in-depth knowledge of systems change. It was like, wow. And so I want to ask you, as someone who does a lot of systems change work, what are the barriers that you see when it comes to career choices? And what in the system do you think needs to shift?
A huge barrier that I see working with the young people in the Belmont-Creighton community is the misconception that you have to go to college to be successful. A lot of our community members are Latinx, and they really do believe that you have to go to college. After speaking with these young people, I've noticed that they need more resources and more opportunities to explore these trades, offering them better resources, better classes, and just trades in general, like construction and electrician. So just being a better support system, not only in our schools, but in our communities, offering these resources that aren't only for college, but for different trades.
And you want to say a little more about your neighborhood?
Oh, yes. In our neighborhood, a third of our population is under the age of 23, meaning that they're all looking for different types of resources.
Okay, very good. What about you, Kayla? So when you think about career options in the IT field, it's a field where people don't look like us, right? You see a lot of black women in IT, or in Alabama, is that fair to say? Is that, okay, all right, so I want you to correct me if it's not. So there's a lot of underrepresentation. What matters to you in terms of belonging and inclusion?
Well, in terms of like being included or belonging, I feel like being comfortable in my workspace with my coworkers and just being able to go to them with anything that I need to, like if I need help, like learning something that I don't know, just like asking them for help and being able to like be included or not have to worry about how they see me, whether it be how my hair looks, how I talk, how I look, how I dress. So just not feeling judged in that space where I'm supposed to be growing as a professional.
So I know you know the answer to this question, so we talked about it, so don't freak out. But when we had a conversation in your previous job, you talked about a mentor, and can you just share a little bit about how he approached you in this space?
Yeah, so when I got my last job, which I was a tier 1 tech specialist, and I got that job, like, it was amazing, and I loved it. And my boss, who was my mentor, he hired me on. He was like, hey, like, I understand that this is a male-dominated space. It's a white man-dominated space. And if you feel uncomfortable about anything, you can come to me, and I'll help you with whatever it is.
Right. And the point of that question is, like, we talk a lot about mentoring and where mentoring comes from. And so I appreciated when we had that conversation, because it really can bubble up from anywhere, right? So I appreciate that. So Reggie, you've had a few years of experience in the classroom, and you've stated that you're committed to being an early childhood educator. And you also noted that it can take on many forms. It can be front office, it could be this, but you're committed to education. How do you think about your future, and where do you see your career going?
As an early childhood educator with a few years of experience, I see my future evolving in several exciting directions. I'm committed to fostering a level of learning in young children. I also plan on expanding my impact beyond the classroom. I plan on pursuing leadership roles such as curriculum coordinator or moving into administration. I plan on furthering my education to deepen my understanding of how young minds grow. I also hope to engage in community outreach to help support families. Ultimately, I plan to advocate for children and educators alike.
I told you, you're among friends. So, again, you're all early in your careers, and again, we've had past conversations, and we've talked about mentors. You talked about yours a little bit here today, but Where do you see the role of mentors when you think about your career trajectory and how you move forward? Do you think mentors are just something that you need now, or is this something that you want to have available to you always? And what does that look like for you moving forward?
I believe mentors are a crucial part throughout your career, even before you start and even possibly after you're done with your career. I believe that they're not only there to help you with navigating your job, but also navigating through life. I was really fortunate enough to meet some of my mentors when I was young, and they helped me not only find what I love to do, but also find myself. So throughout your entire life, you're always going to need that one person or multiple people to give you advice when you're feeling down, give you advice when you're unsure, or just reiterate that you're doing a great job.
And one of the things that you are really interested in, you see in your work, because you talk about working with youth and how important that is to you, but you also have, when you think about your career options and where you want to, I think she's going to be a president of the United States one day. I just think that, and I've asked if I could be on her committee, but I think they're all fabulous. But talk to me about how you mentor young people, what that looks like, just in terms of your role, because you're a youth organizer. That's tough work.
Yes, as a youth organizer, being an organizer is being a resource tool for these young people when it comes to school or personal life, just ensuring that I'm there with the right answers and ensuring that I can help them through whatever problem that they have. Just being someone that they can look up to, but also being that friend that they can have fun with.
And Kayla, we had this conversation because we met you a year ago, and then we came back, and you're like, I'm working for Central 6, Alabama. And I said, what? I said, oh, are you still in the IT field? And he's like, yes, but you had a really unique perspective. Well, it's not you had a perspective on why the work that you're doing now, how that's going to support you in the IT field in terms of building your toolbox. You want to talk about that?
So yeah, like Michelle said, I started working with Central 6. It's not technically an IT field. They do more workforce development than anything, but I've gained certain skills while working under the team or working with them that I feel would further my education, further my skill experience, and just like further my career in general when it comes to IT. Like, I'm getting the support from them that I feel I need as a young professional.
And Reggie, for you, like, you are in a field where there aren't a lot of men in the field, and so are there perceptions that people have, or in terms of how they think about it, or do you see yourself as a trailblazer in this space and working with young people?
Most people think of a teacher as, a female. So yes, in my space, there's not many male educators, but I feel like I can use that as an advantage. Being able to build, relationships with all the kids, me being, not having as many males throughout the school, me being the only male that's, really in the classroom, so I'm able to, build that bond with all the kids, so.
Fantastic. So that's all I have for you guys, because we're going to move along, but I want us all to show some love to these young people. Aren't they amazing? They're giving you a standing ovation. So we're going to invite these folks to exit stage here. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. You guys were amazing. You killed it. Give it to me. Give it to me. Yes, yes. Very, very good. So, as I said, we have several conversations happening today. So our next group of folks that are about to come out on stage are our mid-career professionals. And so what was really interesting when we did our research is that we talked to a lot of folks who were in various stages of transition. And we talked to a lot of folks who was like, this happened and we had to make a pivot. And so we really wanted to know what that was like. Come on out. And so one of these people you may really recognize, come on out this way. So we have, I'll go ahead, let you guys get seated and I'll introduce you all. So with us today, we have Shay Rainey, she's from Boston. Anybody from Boston, give it up. We have Tracy Carson, who is from Milwaukee. She's a project manager in Milwaukee. We have Andrew Shepard, who is from Wichita. Give it up for Andrew, Wichita. And we have our very own Brianna Rogers from Oakland, California. Well, she's in Oakland, but she's from Berkeley. She's from Berkeley, California, so give it up for Brianna. All right, so you ready to go? Yeah. Okay, so Tracy. She's a project manager and she works for JCP Construction. So again, you're talking about occupational segregation and where people show up in representation. There aren't a lot of people that look like you in project management. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your work?
Okay, it's very interesting. I actually work for JCP Construction, as Michelle has said, and as a project manager, I came to JCP from another company. I was working on Northwestern Mutual's corporate office, and JCP Construction was a subcontractor under me. At the time, I was an engineer. And so we kind of met, and I did a few battles with them as far as making sure that they came up to par on my project. And it was about a 3-4 year thing. Once they did, I was leaving that project, and they asked me, where am I going? And so that's how I ended up coming to JCP Construction.
Right.
I found them good, and they found me acceptable.
And what's interesting about it, only 9% of construction workers are female, and 11% are black. So again, you occupy a really rare space in workforce development. And again, when we're trying to expand our thinking around career navigation and creating opportunities and looking for ways to disrupt occupational segregation, we have people like Tracy that we look to, like this is where we need to go and how do we create these opportunities for more folks. Andrew, tell us a little bit about your work.
My name's Andrew Shepard. I am a senior pipeline technician for Northern Natural Gas. My current focus is mechanical and controls. As a company, we operate and maintain an interstate pipeline system where we deliver natural gas product to our customers. And if I may, I would like to praise God today for allowing me to be here. He's truly been my compass throughout this entire journey. So.
Very good, very good. Amen. Yeah, give it up. So Shay, we met Shay in Boston, and Shay started out as a home health aide and is now a corporate social responsibility. You got a promotion. This was project manager, but you are now, every time I talk to Shay, she has a promotion for Air Wellness. Tell us a little bit about your work.
My current work.
Your current work.
Okay. So I currently work for Air Wellness, which is a multi-state operating cannabis company. I still am a project manager, but now I am the director for the corporate social responsibility department. Thank you. And typically what I do across the 8 states, unfortunately Memphis has not legalized cannabis and marijuana, so we're not operating here, but in the few that we do operate, I try to go into neighborhoods that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drug. And as we often know, most times those areas are people that look like myself, Hispanic, Black and brown communities, and we try to promote equity and uplift whatever their needs are at the moment. And so a big part of AIR's pillars is being a force for good, a part of the CSR team. And so I really try to embody that by getting to know the people in the areas we serve. Like she said, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. It's legalized, it's a different game there. We have a dispensary on every corner. So when I go into other areas like Illinois, it gets a little more difficult, but I'm navigating and making sure we promote equity across the board.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Brianna Rogers. And so you may have seen Brianna on stage, you may have seen her playing the game, but I'm the in-app game
leaderboard.
But Shay, welcome to the stage. Tell us a little bit about your work. Brianna, sorry, I'm not showing me.
Thank you, guys. My name is Brianna Rogers, and I work for Rework the Bay. Rework the Bay is an initiative. We're a project of the San Francisco Foundation. So I'm a funder, but we're a funders collaborative, right? And then also, too, I fundraise. So I wear two hats. I'm a funder and I'm a grantee. But our initiative aims to provide increased access, increase the number of good jobs in the Bay Area, increase equitable access to those jobs, and then we also address the affordable supports that are needed to sustain work, like childcare, transportation, housing. And so that's pretty much what we do, and we work within the 9-county Bay Area.
Okay, thank you. So Tracy, one of the things that we've talked about before in our career navigation work is access to resource, information access, right? So I'm just curious, as a project manager, as a Black woman in construction, how did you go about finding the resources you needed for your career when you transitioned?
Yeah, this is, the resources were always there, even though you feel that as a Black woman, as a Black person and a woman, you feel like you cannot access it because maybe most people that I worked for were white and male. And a lot of times in Wisconsin, it's not the most positive environment.
Say more about that.
Yeah. So you had to understand that the resource is there, but you have to know how to access it, like you said. And you can't be angry, and you can't be, well, they're holding me down. I looked at it as a place where ask the question. If they don't give you the answer, they'll always give you the hard way to go through it. But once you learn how to go through it, once you go through it that hard way, you got the answers. Now you can be a source to the next person. So it's fine. A lot of things I learned trial by fire.
And you talked about how you use the negatives as fuel, but you gave a really great example about being in the field and what they would ask you to do in a way to try and kind of break you and what you did. Do you want to show it?
Yeah, they would, my first jobs were actually on the roads, and so I was a healthcare instructor at that time. But they thought it was a fun thing to make me stake out the project, and that means you go down the road and you're staking, you're hammering in project stakes and laying out the project. So anyway, I started off a little clumsy, but as I was going through my healthcare instructing and all of that, it became a very easy task to do. And so I was doing it all by myself, and it wasn't fun for them anymore. And that's what I mean by just taking the challenge and going through it, and you learn, and you become an expert just because of what you went through, You don't have to complain about it all the time, even though we do all the time, but yeah, it worked out.
And Andrew, you had a completely unexpected and unwanted career interruption that was completely out of your control, but you've rebounded. But part of that transition landed you back in school. Can you share more about the journey, not what happened, but the journey and where you struggled?
Sure. After losing my job, I would best describe it as the searing pain of rejection. I made it through the interview process with many top natural gas companies, and I was told no by all of them. I was running out of options. I was running out of time. That voice inside of me kept saying, higher education, go back to school. So I had to let go, I had to let God. And as soon as I did that, I show up to the college unannounced one day, and Dave Mullins gave me 10 minutes of his time when I needed it the most. And I told him my story. He told me he would do whatever he could to help me succeed. So.
And Brianna, let's talk about your career transitions.
Definitely. I remember in 2009, I had a shift. That wasn't planned. In 2009, I was convicted of a felony, and I had to kind of reinvent myself. I had to rewrite myself, right, into history, if you will, when I finally finished that 5-year felony conviction, which happened in, I think, 10, 11, 12, 14. So 2014, here we're on 2024, so that was 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, right, I utilized the Clean Slate program, right, expunged my residency, and I was ready to go. And I used post-secondary education as well to kind of, find my freedom and reinvent myself as well. Started off with Peralta Community College in California in the Bay, and I realized that I was amazing at school. I mean, amazing, right? And so I ran for student government. Here I am, 32 years old, right, grown, I had a daughter and everything, running for student government. So now I'm student body president at the community college, okay? And I want to say that because, thank you. What happened was, anyways, when you're an adult and you have a lens of life, real life experience, real lived experiences, and now I'm going into a system, and I saw all these problems with the system. Well, kids don't know, but me, I saw, right? So I was complaining about things. And I remember President Debbie Budd, she was the president, she was like, who is this girl? She called me in and she told me power lived with governance. Power lived, in the student body. And so what you want to do is become a part of it. So I did all that, right? Long story short, after that, went to UC Berkeley, realized again, there's problems here, right? Why is the black population at UC Berkeley only 2%? So I leaned into these student worker roles, right? Organizing and advocating and gathering students and providing resources for black transfer students that didn't have any. And, that landed me in Congresswoman Barbara Lee's office. I was interning for her. I thought I wanted to be her one day, right? Or go into law maybe, right? Because there's all these programs. Once you realize where the opportunities lie and what rocks to look under, that's the thing. You don't know what rocks to look under if no one in your family, right? You don't have any mother, father, aunties, and things like that. I was also, I had experienced the foster care system growing up. So there's just lots of lost in the sauce, no mentorship, no guidance, nobody, right? And you become in this survival mode. And then you learn to master. I mastered the tools of survival mode. And when I got into post-secondary education, I realized I'm actually really, really good at this. And joined organizations and just joined societies, and now I'm on boards. And it allows you to develop yourself. It allows you to imagine yourself beyond your current circumstance. And that's just what I did, and I just kind of took advantage of every wave that came to me. I ended up at Georgetown University, National Urban Fellows, funded my entire grad school at Georgetown, and part of that 14-month accelerated program was a 9-month component of a fellowship. They placed me at the Certain Foundation in New York with the Andrews Family Fund, and that was my first time kind of splashing around in philanthropy. And that's when I realized people like me are necessary and needed in spaces like this,
Fantastic.
Right? And that's how I ended up here.
So this is a great segue to you, Shay. So if any of you have seen the videos, particularly around Boston, Shay referenced the leprechauns under the stairs who helped her, right? But Shay, she was like, are you actually going to say, but you're on video saying that. So, but Shay, when you want to talk about, because you got to where you are through the leprechauns under the stairs.
I stand by those leprechauns. They are still there. If you ever visit Boston, Massachusetts, I recommend you visit the Boston Public Library on Boylston Street. It is more than just history. It is a plethora of resources. And like you said, whether it's housing, food insecurities, childcare, they have it. Me and Brianna actually have a similar story, so thank you for sharing. Absolutely. And I'm actually a big part of the Clean Slate initiative that we run in Boston, Massachusetts, so we should connect afterwards. But I say that to say, when I met Michelle, I was actually a case manager working in healthcare. And then I got into some situations, and similar to what you said, you have to know where to look. Yep. And I have the privilege of being born and raised in Boston. I also have a privilege of having a mother who's an educator. And so she instilled in me that education is key, and as long as you have knowledge, then you have power. And so I went to the library, met with the leprechauns under the stairs, and they said, look, these are the things that you went through, these are the things that you have done, and here are a bunch of opportunities for you. And at the time, there just happened to be all these marijuana companies, whether they're medical or recreational, and full transparent, I love the plant. So why would I not transfer those skills into a business where I can actually benefit from it. And most importantly, I had to do some research and see, okay, there's a lot of companies that are doing it. It's a lot of them saying we're doing it the right way. But when I really looked into Air Wellness's pillars and where they're operating and who they're actually serving, I realized that the company didn't have a lot of people that look like me. They do now. And they made it a part of their mission to not just support minorities who were affected by it, but specifically women as well. And so I now have the platform and the skills due to the people under the stairs pointing me in a direction to take some classes, get certified, become more educated, and not just using the product, but understanding what it can do medicinally for people. And that was what really helped push my change. So now I go around breaking stigmas, educating people against the myths versus the facts on how the plant could be used, most importantly. But then it also helps me show people that there's a career path for you. Just figure out what it is that you have a passion about, who can support you, and take it from there and go.
So what's beautiful about all of these conversations to me is that there are some folks who faced internal struggle, and then there are folks, and they were able to turn to mentors, and the idea that the resources are there. And this is something that we know, the resources are there, so how do people have access to the resources? And so when we think about career navigation, what is it that we can do in our respective spaces to shift that, right? And I think the other piece that you said, and this is what my 56-year-old brain just loses it. I don't know what I was going to say, so I'm just going to keep it moving. But anyways, oh, you were talking about, I don't know what she was talking about. I mean, I do know, but I can't remember, but it may come to me anyways. But anyways, so I think that's really important. As we wrap up this conversation, what is it that you want people to know about mid-career transitions, and where do we need to shift in workforce development to support that? You guys can go first.
So I guess for me it would be any adult that is making a shift in a career change. I think it's important to find people that not just look like you, but that understand you. And having a mentor or just having that support system is very important. Like, obviously we all have families and we want money, but money isn't everything, and it sure doesn't buy happiness. We've learned that the hard way sometimes. But once you figure out what it is you want to do, just go for it and don't take no for an answer. Tap into every resource possible. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, she said it a mouthful, and that's pretty much it. Making a shift at this time, going from engineering to managing, and having crews underneath me, or working with me, we'll put it that way. It took someone that understood who I was as a person. I have to give a shout out to JCP Construction, and Cliff is here, and all of the Phelps brothers, James and Jalen, and my team back at home. Sorry about that. But just wanted to give a shout out because they made it so easy for me to make the transition. So I would say if there's an open door for you to go through, I was always told, go through the open door. If it's closed for a reason. Go through the open door. And as Andrew said, I give honor to God because he showed me the right open doors. So I believe that, if you just go through the right door, you'll get there. Yeah.
I would say definitely don't be afraid to use your resources. I know for me it was really hard to go back to school at 39 years old. But the minute I did, Northern Natural Gas called me 2 weeks after to offer me a full-time position. I couldn't take that position. I had to turn it down. Now I'm committed to school. They called me that same day and offered an internship with them, which Dave Mullins became the key element after that. He allowed me to use that internship for credit towards my degree. He navigated me to the workforce scholarship, which paid for so much: tuition, books, a month of our mortgage, our highest bill of the summer, so many things. So many blessings just started pouring in. And it was truly amazing. I'm thankful for men like Dave Mullins and everybody else who worked at the workforce to help me out and my family in my time of need. And yeah, I just say, don't be afraid to ask for help, because it's there.
And of course, we want to know, like, those resources should be made available to everybody, right? Like, that's a beautiful thing that you had access to those resources. But our job is like, how do we make them available to all? How do we make them all? That is fantastic. I know what I was going to say before we get to you. What I hear from Brianna and Tracy, well, from everybody really, is about when we think about career navigation, it's like, how do we create space for people to have experiences that allow them to figure out what they're good at? Yeah. I don't know I'm good at school unless I'm given the space and the opportunity to explore it. So again, when we think about expanding how we think about career navigation, it's not just about the career pathways, it's about what it means to self-assess, it's what it means about career exploration, it's what it means about career connecting to jobs, and what are the barriers and what are the facilitators. And so where do we change when we see the barriers? And what do we lift up when we see what's working, right? So I just appreciate you saying that. And then I will let you have the last word about it.
For sure, and what doors need to be opened or kicked down, right? I heard you. I'm a table shaker, so I encourage everyone to kick down those doors, right? No, seriously, sometimes you do need to do that, because sometimes historically, systematically, those doors are shut for certain people, but they open wide for others, you know? So you need to challenge the current status quo. One last thing I want to leave folks with is, if you are, and you spoke truth to power here, when talking about being 39 years old, 32, 33, right, in your 30s, going through education, scholarships, I'm talking to the funders now. So think about funding innovatively, right? I want to say this because when you fund business per usual, it's business per usual. When you fund spaces and you think innovatively, even though you can't see the light at the end of the rainbow, talking about the KPIs, right? Throw that out the window, because sometimes that seed that's planted, it takes years. I mean, I started my first class in 2014. It's 2024. I'm on the main stage now, right? And so think long term and think outside the box, because as much as you think you are the experts, you're not necessarily the experts of it all. We're not necessarily the experts of it all. And lean into community and people with personal lived experience.
So I could continue this conversation for a long time, but we are going to move on. So let's thank our speakers, amazing speakers. You guys did fantastic. You killed it. Thank you. You killed it. Thank you. You killed it. You killed it. Yes. So proud of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right, so we're going to move on to our employers, our next group of folks. As I mentioned earlier, when we were traveling around and having conversations with folks, oh yes, Juvilee is back, my co-host. So when we were doing this and we were talking about what we wanted to have conversations about, what do you think about this, what do you think about this, and we talked about the folks that we had on stage, the employers and the educator. Juvilee's like, I want to talk to them. So we're like, all right, you be my co-host. Yes. So here she is, our co-host, Juvilee, so welcome back. So as I mentioned before, these are some of the folks who are named as change makers, and we really wanted to have a conversation with them as well, too. So I want to introduce our next guest. We have here Clifton Phelps. He is the co-owner of JCP Construction. It's a Black-owned construction company that he owns with his brother in Milwaukee. Brothers, and we have Anita Andrews Hutchinson, who is from Chicago, and she, along with two other sisters, opened up early learning centers in Chicago, Illinois. Let's give it up for Chicago. Let me go back, because I know that there are some Milwaukee folks in the room, and I'm just going to say Milwaukee. And then we have Dave Mullins, who is the Director of Business and Industry at Hutchinson Community College, and he works in a very unique space as well. He's a community college educator, but he also runs programs, degree-seeking programs inside minimum, medium, and maximum security prisons. So that's that. And then we have Juvilee. So I'm just going to start off, and I have one question, and I'm just going to toss it over to Juvilee. So as I mentioned before, you each occupy a unique space. Clifton, you and your brothers own a construction company, and so when we were doing our research, it's like 5% of construction firms in the United States are Black owned. 5%. Anita, you co-founded a network of early learning centers in Chicago, and less than 16% of them are Black owned, and most of those are home-based. Dave, in a completely different space, you lead business and industry courses at a community college in Hutchinson, but you teach these degree-earning college courses. The impacts of occupational segregation go beyond just the worker. But it also, and so when I talked about it, also impacts business owners, so it's not, we talk about career navigation, the mobility, but also lateral moves and where job quality matters. But you guys are in spaces where you're owners and you're leaders and you occupy a rare space. Can you talk about just some of the unique challenges being in the spaces that you are?
Yep. All right, cool. So I just want to add to that statistic about 5% being minority nationwide. Only 15% make it past 5 years. So out of that 5%, it even shrinks down to even more than that. And I'm just happy to be celebrating 15 years with my brothers and construction company that we built. Challenges from our end are access to contracts, access to capital, access to process, right? As well as access to good employees. If I could just go over some of those points, access to contract is basically being able to be in the right room to get the contract and to understand what the industry is. Access to capital, line of credit, we based off a 90-day paid salary, so if we're pumping out $190,000 a week in payroll, and we don't get it for 90 days, we're gonna need a line of credit, but that's hard to get a line of credit because all those different KPIs the banking industry uses. The last one is process. In any industry, I don't care if it's a restaurant, I don't care what it is, if there's a lack of process, there's a lack of food delivery, then it means it's also a if there's a lack of process, then there's a lack of efficiency, which means there's a lack of profitability. So those are things that typically with family-run businesses that are passed on generation to generation. So as entrepreneurs and business owners, if we don't have that interlocking or that interlock with understanding how everything works, we tend to run out of business pretty quickly. And obviously growing employees, and I want to give a shout out to Jerry Roberts here for bringing us here from Milwaukee Workforce Fund, as well as the National Fund for inviting us to here.
Also, Anita and I did not coordinate.
They did.
So I'm going to speak specifically about the challenges in correctional education. One of the biggest challenges is funding, right? So we are a second chance Pell School, so the folks that are taking classes with us are eligible for Pell Grants. We'll transition into what will be called prison education programs over the next year and a half or so. That funding used to be just only for the second chance Pell schools, and now it is open up for everybody as long as they're a prison education program. So some of but the funding is not just, that's available, but it doesn't cover everything. Actually, for most students, it doesn't cover the full bill. So being able to cover that is one of the challenges. I think the other challenge is in that environment, we're answering to a lot of different authorities, right? We've got to answer to the college and to making sure that we're a creditable program, but also to the warden, right, and to the State Department of Correction. There's a whole lot of people that have competed. They're all aligned, but the interests are a little bit different, sure. Right? So that's a big challenge. And then making sure that the students that we're working with see themselves as students and see themselves as employable when they get out, right? Mm-hmm. So those are some of the leadership challenges.
Thank you. First, I want to start off in gratitude and thanking the National Fund for having me here. And also a huge shout out to the Chicagoland workforce. Where are y'all? Okay, Bruce and Cindy, thank you for creating this opportunity. I think for us, it is three things: capital, talent, and enrollment. So capital, you know, my best friend's mom, she took the plunge. She started our first early learning center by taking $40,000, her retirement fund, and opening the first early learning center because we didn't have access to resources. And you know, when we added in our second and third early learning center, my dad did the same thing. He took out his retirement fund because, you know, of the lack of access of capital. So resources. Second is the talent. I'm sure most of you all know that there is a teacher shortage across the nation, and we're affected by it. And so one of the things that we, in Chicago, we're in competition with our partners, which we love our partners, but they are able to pay their teachers more. They offer shorter days. They offer summers off. How can you compete with a summer off? And so it takes a village. We took a stake in the ground, and we committed to paying our teachers in parity with the local school council, local school district, which was a leap of faith. And we also added in PTO, and we also, we couldn't get that summer thing yet, but we're working on it. But that's talent, and so really creating a space where people are allowed to make a choice of the environment they want to work for, not just because of the different compensation. And then for enrollment, we are also, you know, we have the same children, and, you know, for families that can pay tuition at our schools, the local school district can, you know, allow families up to 400% of FPL to enroll for free, and we can only do that to 200%. And so there's a difference in, you know, offering the opportunity for families to participate, so those three things.
Thank you. So my job for now is done. I'm going to hand it over to my co-host Juvilee because there are questions that she wanted to ask, and so who am I to stop her?
Yeah, of course. As leaders and educators in your community, what does mentorship mean to you all?
I'll start off. As an educator, I really believe that there is gold in our communities, and that gold is our people. All we have to do is, you know, cultivate and create a pathway for people to see the opportunity. And so we have really decided that in investing in early learning and early child education, in investing in loving and educating the youngest of our citizenry, then it allows us the opportunity to also work with their parents and their whole families. And so that has been our, that's how we've started to create a pathway to mentor. But it is, you know, we have the talent in our communities, and we just have to create a pathway. So we did that in two ways. One was we are a cradle to career. And so we have early learning centers, we have social justice elementary schools, and we have a wonderful workforce development program. We don't have a high school yet, we're still working on that, but that pathway has allowed us this year, it's our 20th year, to have students who were in our toddler program, they've come back and they're teachers now. And so it's been a long road, but we wanted to create a cycle of cradle to career and create that opportunity at every step. The second way is our workforce development program. I'll just say this really quickly. We have 6 steps. 1 is just exposure. 2 is an entry-level credentialing program through CDAs. 3rd is our cohorts model that we created for people who are in junior college or at a university. And then we also have our professional education and license training program. So we help teachers get over that final hump so they can get higher wages because they're national, now they have a license. And then finally, offering gainful improvement.
So what does mentorship mean to me? Well, I'm going to give a couple answers. One, we have some really formal mentorship arrangements with our apprenticeship programs that we have, right? So they're very formal. People are assigned particular people as a mentor. It's a very formal relationship. And then we have informal mentorships that are out there. So Andrew mentioned earlier, and very humbled that I was able to be part of another story related to correctional education. I had a gentleman stop by my office a few years ago, knocked on the door. I didn't recognize him. I wasn't his teacher. I was just an administrator. And he mentioned, he said, I just want to stop and say thank you, right? I was incarcerated at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility for 25 years. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was in my last year of incarceration, and all I could think of is how am I going to get back in, because this is the only life I know. And I took this class that you guys offered, and we call it a manufacturing skills certificate. It's really short, it's just 8 credit hours. It's not a whole certificate, whole degree program. And that, he said, I took that and I thought this is something I could do. I could see myself doing this job. And then I released, I got out, I got a job at a manufacturing company. It was a town about an hour away from Hutchinson. But I can pay my rent. I've got a place to go to work every day. It changed my life, right? And that's why we do what we do as educators, right? And to be able to have that impact on somebody was, you know, it's just it's a beautiful thing, right? You've seen the same thing, Cliff, right?
Yeah, well, before we get
Just
to
a
Cliff,
sec.
I just do, because this is, you mentioned that story, but we also have someone, your mentee, who has a similar story about how he knocked on your door and how you rise to the occasion, right? So just appreciate your work in terms of mentorship. Full circle, yes.
Yeah, it's just, you never know when you might have that opportunity to mentor somebody, right? You know, it could be a chance conversation, and you just say the right thing, and you can, you know, the fact that you have the opportunity to do that, and you can change the course of somebody's life is wonderful. A stairway moment.
A stairway moment. So, fun fact, I took my LSAT, and when I was in undergrad, and I got a pretty good LSAT score, so I thought I was gonna be a lawyer. That didn't happen, right? But what it did do, it didn't happen. I called back to home because my dad had a stroke, and but what door did open, see how I did that? What door did open is I worked at a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit in Milwaukee called Running Rebels, and I learned for the next 4-year journey of what mentoring was, and I probably mentored close to maybe like 90 on a caseload. I was a case manager for them, for a lot of youth that were essentially mandate reported to contact me every single day. And some of those relationships led to incarceration per my recommendation, and some relationships led to relationships that I have to this day with youth in the community. One of them is a developer that has developments. I called him Anthony when he was 16, has developments close to like 124 million across the United States, and as a developer. And when I had lunch with him last week when he was in Milwaukee, and he was like, if you never were my caseworker, I don't know what I would have been. So mentor is important, I think, but most importantly about just in terms of the mentoring, it never leaves you, right? You're always gonna wait there to talk to someone. You always wanna strike up that conversation just in case that there's a chord alignment, just in case that there's synergies, and that's what happens when you kind of get embedded inside of mentor. The last point I'll put is, what we do every summer is that during the school year, we have lunch and learns with neighborhood schools. They come into our organization, we feed them lunch, we ask them questions, we kind of create connecting activities with them in small groups. We just had one last week. We got one planned for like next week. And it's not really just to convince them to come into construction. It's just because no one really opened the door for me at that age to come look inside and see what a business owner looks like and ask those questions. So the mentorship changes, it evolves over those years, but the core principle of mentorship is caring about a generation, or caring about a kid, or caring about whoever is looking for help.
Great question, Juvilee.
We're going to be switching up the flow and asking more individual questions. So I'll start off with Anita. In a space where only 60% of early learning centers are Black owned, how did you navigate becoming a co-founder of a large early learning center with multiple campuses around Chicago?
Great question. I think the first thing is just faith. When I was 19 years old, I asked, I was praying, And I was just like, Lord, just use me for your will. And, you know, whatever that path is, you know, I'm going to be faithful, and I'm going to travel on it. And so that has been kind of my guiding star for the work that I do. And then, you know, just in terms of practicality, you know, I quit medical school too, so we have that in common. But that's another story. Anybody want drinks? We'll do that later. But in that, when I was studying for my USMLEs, because I was doing a lot of mentorship, I was doing a lot of community work, and I was just like, you know what? When I pass this test, I'm not going to be able to work with these young people anymore. And I was just like, you know what, maybe, you know, I've invested a lot of time and a lot of money into, you know, borrowed money, into this field, but maybe this isn't my path. And so it was just, you know, that fortitude, the courage that I think my parents instilled in me to you know, pivot. And sometimes life, you have to pivot. And so, you know, so I changed gears and I went into early childhood education, but you know, all my whole life was in medicine. But I was like, I'm good at math. I can balance some budgets and I can, you know, write a business proposal. And so tapping into, and then researching and knowing that you're not the only one. And so connecting to the Chicago Women's Business Development Corporation was a key, because they believed in us and they put us in a connection, in a place where we could get a small loan to kind of continue the pathway. But yeah, I think just my parents, Gwen, who did take the first plunge and invest her retirement plan. I mean, that's a leap of faith, you know what I'm saying? So I think faith just kind of permeates the work that we do, and always being in gratitude for the opportunities that present themselves.
Such an impactful story. Dave, what challenges do you face in helping to prepare your justice-involved students for the challenges they'll face seeking work once they're released?
So some of the challenges with our correctional students, right, is identity, right? You know, the society calls them convicts, right? Sometimes within the system, they're referred to either as offenders or more kindly as residents sometimes. But we identify them as students, right? When they're with us, they're students, right? And so that's a big part of it, right? I mean, that's kind of a first step, that they you know, while they're with us, they see themselves as students. We also then, we've got 2 educational navigators. We have 100 students a year that pursue their GEDs, and we've got about 120 students a year that are in post-secondary education. So we've got 2 educational navigators that help navigate that process, right? Sticking with that navigation theme here. We also then bring in speakers to the classes. We've got some employers that will come in and talk about what their journey was and how, you know, it wasn't a smooth path, you know, things that were, I thought I was going to do this and then I had to pivot and do that. We've got our apprenticeship coordinator that'll come in and talk to all of our classes about, here are some opportunities that are out there, and here are especially companies or industry segments that are very second chance friendly. And then we have a career services coordinator. It's a new position for the college, but one of the things that person will do is come in and speak to the students as well. And we have planned for this year that we'll do a career fair, right? So like the job fair we have on the outside at our sports arena, we have lots of employers come to that. We'll do a small, I'm sure it'll be a smaller version, but it'll be a chance for students to talk to employers and see what opportunities that are out there. So those are some of the things that we do.
I just want to say thank you so much for the amazing work that you do. It sounds really fulfilling, and it sounds really impactful. So I hope people that are watching and people here really do hear the work that he's doing and appreciate him for it.
Yeah, I have a great team.
That's great. And Cliff, you did mention that you own a construction company with your brothers in a space where only 5% of construction companies are Black owned.
Yep.
Tell us about your story.
So the story starts of 3 brothers not really liking their jobs. And we were sitting upstairs from our parents' house. They have a duplex. We're like, man, if we can just work less hours and own our own business. And that was our thought process. So we wanted to work less hours, but now we work more hours than everyone in the office. So, but I think in terms of like the journey, I think the journey evolves, you know, as just trying to navigate everything throughout. Luckily, it's three of us. We all have 3 different skill sets. We all give 3 different answers up here, which helps us kind of scope the board a lot more and do what everyone's good at in terms of how to grow the company. I think in terms of our biggest thing that we had to kind of figure out maybe like 8 years ago is let's stop trying to create our own thing and let's figure out what other companies are doing out here and let's mimic that, you know. And that's leaning on resources and that's kind of understanding how business in itself go. We didn't want to be that failing company. We wanted to make it over our 5-year hump, our 10-year hump. Made it to our 15-year hump, so we just have to kind of figure out and start to look at the next generation. But I think in overall for the company, it's something that I think hopefully my story, anyone can reach out to me in terms of what that looks like for any of those pillars that I talked about, because they are challenges and they are the death of most companies. But I think the best satisfaction I have is our employees. Tracy was up here earlier today. We call her Mama Carson, or Sister Carson. She plays a whole tambourine in the office. It's very relieving, but it's satisfying to employ some of the best employees that we have that work for our company, and just to get to where we are. When I think about just overall working with family, my brother's being a family-owned business again, or a family-owned business, especially African-American one, it's really something that we actually have to wake up every day and kind of pinch ourselves about. Definitely challenges, but you know, challenges that maybe took 3 months before, probably take a day, you know, a week now, and,
right.
and you know, we just kind of work our way through everything. That clock is, I don't know, a minute over. Huh?
It is.
All right. I was wondering why she was sitting
It
up.
is okay. Well, we knew, I mean, every time we have these state of the work conversations, people always want more and more and more because there's lots that we can talk about. So thank you to all of you guys, but also our co-host, Juvilee. So this ends our State of the Workforce podcast. I want to thank you for joining us today, and for those of you who are on LinkedIn Live, please make sure to follow the National Fund and stay up to date with all the latest from State of Our Workforce. You can find us at any podcasting streaming station that you listen to. So tune in next month as we continue the conversation. But before I go, I want to do a few shout outs to the folks who made some of this work possible. Our career navigation team, Jordan Duffy, yes, Michelle Rafferty, Josh Enoch, Jessica Jones, as well as Karan Campbell and Brittany Cord. Shout out to them. Our collaborative SkillWorks Boston, Central 6 Alabama Works, Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance, Milwaukee Area Workforce Funding Alliance, and the Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas. I also want to thank Patty Konstantakis with Walmart, who sponsored this work and helped put us on the path around the career navigation conversations. And so in the words of the greatest to ever do it, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with us. We appreciate that. That's Jigga Jay-Z Hove, if you don't know. So anyways, I will now hand this over to Amanda Cage. Thank you, everybody. So